On this edition of Behind the Bills, we'll be discussing a new pathway for school leaders statewide to complete their preliminary administrative services credential and how ACSA helped move this bill through the state capitol. So let's get started. All LEAs now have the ability to create an intern program for candidates seeking a preliminary administrative services credential, and the option allows candidates who meet prerequisite conditions to complete their preliminary credential while working in an administrative position. And to make sense of all of this, we welcome ACSA legislative advocate Serette Kaminski onto Behind the Bills. Serette, you and Dr. Tammy Tooker, ACSA's credential and coaching director, had a conversation about an issue with the law. Let's just kind of tell us, how did we get here? What does this all mean to prospective administrators, to current administrators? Like, what does all of this mean?
Sure, Naj. Dr. Tooker and we had a conversation. It was just kind of a check-in to talk about CTC issues, Commission on Teacher Credentialing issues. And this got brought up, and I think it was at some point in 2024, talking about how maybe this could be a potential law that could be changed, and something she identified. On the ACSA side, with our GR team, vetting is very extensive for an ACSA sponsored bill. So, all of us advocates, we listen to our regions when they do report outs. They're talking about topical issues, things that members grapple with. And I've always sort of created this list of policy changes that fall under staffing issues. And this year in particular, in this 2024, 2025, legislators and staffers were just messaging to us at ACSA, look, this is going to be a lean budget year. Don't be coming with your handout. We're looking for things not necessarily to cut, but maintain status quo. It's going to be dicey. So we were thinking of policy changes and potential legislation for staffing shortage, addressing that, but things that didn't have money attached to it. And so, yes, the idea that Dr. Tooker came was good for us internally, but my question was also, does this rise to the level of all of our membership? So the first thing we had to do was go to our membership. So we started with surveying our members, namely the Council of HR Leaders, and this actually emerged as one of the top 3 issues that they identified. The second piece is that it's completely in line with our One Voice platform. So that's a policy document that the governmental relations team uses to just help us with our work and how we do our business. This is seeking multiple methods to demonstrate professional competency. It helps reduce barriers to recruitment and career advancement. It also would support an affordable and expedited credential program. So then the next thing is also looking at the stats, right? What's the scope of the actual problem? So who operates a preliminary administrative credential? I found that out of 57 total approved institutions, 18 are LEAs, but they're predominantly county offices of ed. 3 of those 18 are districts. And so, the idea was, well, this would be great to address it for county offices of ed, but maybe districts might want this opportunity too. So the other piece of it was checking in with those 3 districts and seeing, out of those that already offer a preliminary administrative credential, would they be interested in the intern pathway, which all 3 said yes, that this is something that they wanted.
Sir, let me ask you, because you just brought a data point in there. You said you had 18, but only 3 of them were districts and 15 were LEAs. Did I get that correct?
18 total LEAs, and 3 of those are districts.
Are you surprised?
County offices.
Were you surprised by that breakdown?
No, not necessarily. County offices in their role tend to have probably more preliminary or more credentialing pathways already. But yes, some districts, especially large districts, might offer that as well.
So describe the process on how you go about getting a bill into print.
Normally you start with the pitch, right? You have maybe a 1-pager, you run it by different authors. We might start with strong authors that have relationships with ACSA, maybe a former ACSA member or a former school board member, someone who has a strong educational base. Maybe they sit on one of the Assembly or Senate Education Committee. Assemblymember Hadwick had just gotten elected in 2024 in the general election. And so that's our standard in our department is we'd like to meet with new members, right? Just introduce ourselves. Hey, this is ACSA. Welcome to the legislature. We're really looking forward to working with you. So this was a part of a standard meet and greet where we talk about our priorities, we hear what her priorities are and see if there's any mutual alignment. And it was such a serendipitous conversation because Assemblymember Hadwick was already working with Christina Marcellus, who was representing Placer County Office of Ed, on a bill idea for county offices to offer the intern pathway. And so we asked her, I believe it was right at that meeting, if she'd be interested in expanding it to districts as well who meet those same CTC accreditation standards. And she had to run it back to her folks, but came back with a yes. And it was just such a breeze to work with the assembly member. She was easy to work with. She had great staff. And then the bill was also eventually co-sponsored with the California County Superintendents and with Brianna Bruns, namely, another close colleague. So it's just real seamless and actually quite fun process on this bill in particular.
I was going to say it was quite a coincidence, if you will, to have that lawmaker be somebody that you were having that initial conversation with.
100%. But I mean, also she came from Modoc County Office of Ed, so she got it immediately. I mean, everything she was saying was just completely in line with what ACSA members say.
Okay, so the bill is in print. So tell us what's next. Tell us more about the path this bill took that ultimately led to its signature, and any opposition that lawmakers faced as you tried to move this through.
Sure. So Naj, I've known you for years. I'm not sure if you know this part, but I'm a little superstitious. So I never want to say out loud my true feelings about a measure and what I'm thinking about it. But since this bill is already signed, I'm going to speak freely.
Perfect.
But it was a rare experience to work on a bill that moved so seamlessly through the process. I mean, it was a delight. So any bill has to go through policy committees first, then it goes to a fiscal committee if it's tagged for fiscal cost. Then it goes to the floor for a full vote, and then it moves to the opposite house to repeat the process. So this bill started in the assembly, and then it goes through that process in the assembly, then moves on to the Senate. Normally, we would tap an ACSA member to come to the Capitol and provide lead witness testimony, but the bill was such a breeze, it was on consent. So there wasn't really any dialogue. The bill received no votes throughout the entire process. Later, towards the end, when we were already in the Senate, there at one point, this is where you're checking in with the administration as well, where you're just making sure you're on track for a signature. The administration did signal that they wanted some language added that would just make sure the requirements and the expectations around the administrative internships were more cohesive and well known to everybody. So at that point, what we do as a co-sponsor, even as a support on a bill, we always take certain amendments back to our ACSA members and just say, hey, does this work on you on the implementation side? Are these okay? So, that received a thumbs up. We were good to go. And of course, we always want to be responsive when the administration flags some things, because if it's left unaddressed, sometimes it could lead to a veto. So in this case, those amendments were fined by everybody and the bill was signed.
You mentioned surveying the HR council kind of at the beginning of this process, just getting their feedback. There were two other priorities that kind of rose above this one in that survey of the HR council. What were those?
Sure. So there were two that rose just a little bit above. Number one was our 60-day substitute bill. So we also co-sponsored a bill, Assembly Bill 1224 by Assemblymember Valencia last year. It was vetoed, but we've continued those efforts. It's now a 70-day sub bill under Assembly Bill 2490 with the same author, Assemblymember Valencia. The second piece that rose to a high level with our Council of HR leaders was the issue of out-of-state school counselors and school psychologists, trying to grant them an automatic preliminary PPS credential so they can immediately work while they're clearing their credential with the CTC here in California. That was similar to like the military spouse flexibility. That was turned into Assembly Bill 606 by Assemblymember Quirk Silva, and I'm happy to report that bill was also signed last year. So I was personally working on 3 co-sponsored bills in 1 year. I don't recommend it, but if you are lucky to have a bill like Assembly Bill 959 with Assemblymember Hadwick, then it eased the troubles.
We were not going to talk about this particular one, but I do want to make note of this because Assembly Bill 1224, Valencia on the 60 days, is now 2490 and now 70 days. Last year, we got to this point where it ended up at the governor's desk and it was a veto. Comes back. You guys have been working nonstop on this, and now we've gone to from a 60-day to now a 70-day. How on earth did we get to that?
Yeah, well, it's changed a lot. I mean, if you look at the version we had last year versus the version that's in print right now, they're very different. We've responded to opposition arguments and tried to amend the bill to allay any of those concerns. I think it's strengthened the bill. I think the policy exercise is doing right by students, making sure that the substitutes they are getting for a longer period of time do have mentorship, professional development opportunities, orientation. So what is in print would give a sub so much more, of a baseline. It just, yes, you want the continuity for students, but we're going to have a whole lot of other bells and whistles that will enable that substitute to be better prepared to work in a longer stint. It's up to 70 days because of the recent budget agreement that added paid pregnancy leave. So, if it's leave, people will likely take it. So we're just preparing on the implementation side to make sure that we're going to be effective with our staffing.
I like that you said when people have leave, they actually take it. It's not like you ever go on a vacation around here. I swear it's like you're working nonstop with this stuff. And you said something key, and I think this always kind of the values and beliefs here at ACSA, doing right by students. That was something key that you said, and I think it's important to make sure we reiterate that. This has been ACSA legislative advocate Serette Kaminski giving us a rundown on some of the bills that she's been working on. Serette, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Naj.
And Behind the Bills is available on your favorite podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And don't forget, more legislative news and information, as well as information you need to do your job, is available on the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break. You can listen to the lunch break here on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. Behind the Bills is produced by Michael Kelly. I'm Naj Alikhan, and we'll see you next time on Behind the Bills.